Hey, hello. What's up? How's it going? Yo! I'm Jester and I stream Genshin Impact and apparently Honkai Star Rail.
I'm a
Right.
Genshin scientist and I make videos on YouTube. Criminal videos because Mihoyo doesn't want them.
Today we have a guest. Would the guest like to introduce themselves?
Sure. I'm Jaime. I'm an up and coming YouTuber on the grind. I make guides, theorycrafting, speedrunning, all sorts of videos. Mostly on Genshin, but just like Jason, I will say that I do occasionally make a Star Rail video, although not that consistent. But I do want to say that I do hope that everyone on this call and anyone watching in chat that hopefully you have good plans tomorrow to have a good Christmas.
Yes, happy holidays.
I know we still obviously have to do our own dailies, but it is what it is.
No, you don't.
I do hope.
Skip them every now and then. Things are more important.
Yeah, I do hope that people in chat and you guys as well, tomorrow you enjoy your time with your families, if it is possible, of course, if they are living close to each other. But that's the most important thing. But yeah, at least for now, since it's still Christmas Eve, then we can have this podcast talking about Genshin. Pog.
Yeah. Ho, ho,
Yeah.
ho, ho.
Have a good time.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, so what's going on in Genshin? We're going to be talking about Navia, like, post-release today. Do you guys have any fun first impressions, comments?
Alright, I can start. My first impression on Navia is that she is a character that has a ceiling that is pretty interesting in terms of being able to deal a lot of damage to a single opponent, but she also has the kind of flexibility that allows her to be played in a lot of different types of content in terms of Abyss lineups, because she can really fit on a lot of teams, both as a carry and as a more of a quick swap sub DPS carry. And this makes her a really nice fit on a lot of accounts to me, a lot of account types. So she's a pretty good unit, in my opinion.
You know, funny you mentioned that. I have not had... The most fun I've had with Navia as, like, a more quick swappy character is Noelle.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I have... And even then, like, the Noelle teams, I've found them underperforming compared to a lot of just Navia DPS teams. I don't know if anyone has the same experience with that.
The thing is, she can just swap in and deal a lot of instantaneous damage. So if you need a little bit of damage to clear the wave, the current wave, and then you can go back to the other carry. Like I tried her with Nubilette, for example, and instead of doing an additional Nubilette charge attack, I can just finish the wave with Navia, for example, in the first side of the Abyss, and then harass the second wave of mobs with other charge attacks from Nubilette right after. So I think the frontal damage she provides has a lot of value in general. That's my point. What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, she feels pretty good to me. I mean, this is the thing with any new character, especially new DPS, is that no one really knows for quite a while, including myself.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I could disagree with you and say that she's like a hyper carry and you can pay a quick swap, but not really. But in reality, I don't really know until we give it like a patch or two. But I've put out my own videos and given my first impressions. But yeah, I don't know if I can make too early of a conclusion, to be honest. Like, we really do have to see how she develops, and
I can say very confidently.
It's called first impressions for a reason.
Yeah, I can say very confidently for Niviolette, she is indeed a downgrade to Zhongli.
Zhongli.
Yeah, I'm sorry, TGS.
I tried her with Constellation 1 Nibilette. So in those situations, I didn't need the shielding anyway.
It's not even just the shielding, it's the shred. The shred adds more damage than Navia can ever do.
In terms of calculated damage, I can agree. The team, not even comparing to anything else, but the team itself having that window of Navia damage in between UV-LED damage instances helped in some situations for me. But I agree that ideally her quick swap playstyle would fit better with another quick swap carry that synergizes better with her.
Okay.
That's for sure.
Yeah. I kind of actually wanted to mention, yeah, it's a great idea, because talking about what teams we've played and enjoyed playing is really important. We should have probably started with that. Whoops.
Okay, my experience with teams has been that in the second side, so against bosses where you can execute a very specific fixed rotation, the hypercarry Navia team with Bennett, Zhongli or Albedo, and then Fiorina or Yelan works very well. In the first side, where there are a lot of different mob waves that with different HP pools, I found something that is more flexible to perform better than having the constraint of Bennett. I even tried something like a double Electro with Jaime Fischl, double Geo.
Oh, I didn't even try that. What?
Having 3 characters that can deal damage in a very flexible way really helps in multi-target, multi-wave scenario to me.
That's fun. Yeah. I've also played a lot of Zhongli, Bennett, Shengling, or Farina. Something that I've also been playing a fair bit is Zhongli Goro Farina for the crystallized suck. Here's an OCD thing for me, and I'm not a very OCD person. I don't like the fundamental inconsistency on Navia's damage, and I don't like that there are 2 layers of inconsistency. There's the Crystal Shrapnel and the Rosula Shard Shots. Both of these things cause variance in her damage. They're semi-related, but also not entirely. If anyone's not aware of what I'm talking about, Crystal Shrapnel is the mechanic where she generates the ammo every time you pick up a crystallize. It's not enough to just generate the crystals, you need to pick them up. And then that gets turned into Rosula Shard Shots, which scale from 6 to 11. And then the damage that her E-scale does depends on the amount of these invisible hits that hit an enemy, but it still only ever produces 1 number. So sometimes it can be weird. So let's say your Navia is barely scratching 300k with a maxed, all 11 shard shots in 1 target. If you suddenly hit for 280, it's like, bro, what the fuck? Where's my 300k?
Yeah, she's not exactly a very easy character to play rotation-wise, and that's why I prefer the hypercarry team with Yelan over the hypercarry team with Fiorina, because having to worry about the stacks Fiorina generates on top of having to worry about performing a good rotation with Navia,
okay, wait, hold on.
has not been impossible to me,
tried-
but just a bit annoying.
Have you tried Xiangling? I have to ask.
No, not yet, actually.
It feels nice for Bennett energy, regarding Shengling. It's nice. Sometimes it can feel very bad, because, just normal Shengling issues. But I like it. I'm able to semi-consistently one-rotate the bosses on second half with Shengling, besides Copelia, which is really nice. But I don't really have to use Farina Yelan to hit damage thresholds.
Yeah, going back to my point, I would say that if you have a Constellation 1 Farina and Iger, definitely the Fiorina team is the way to go for hypercarry Navia. Otherwise, a Constellation 0 Yelan is pretty competitive to me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's alright.
I guess my thing with Navia is, I thought that outside of Bennett, that I think she's shown to be very independent, or rather her teammates are very flexible. I don't actually know what you guys thought, but I know like myself, the Jeff, and some other TCs who I've heard from, that it feels like Bennett is by far her best teammate, and then to us, and then aside from him, I can't give my recommended teammates, but it seems that people can just are free to try out whoever they want and see what works for them.
Against bosses, for sure, to me. If you're facing mob waves that are pretty that spawn in different points of the room, I wouldn't say that Bennett is straight up her best partner by far. Like it's a great choice for sure, but as I said earlier, you can come up with more flexible teams potentially that perform better depending on what you're facing.
You know, it's interesting. If you really look at her kit and kind of dive into the numbers, she's somewhat designed to be played Bennettless. Everything is very high base attack. She gives herself attack percent for being played with allies. I would, even if you don't think the Bennettless teams are very good right now, I wouldn't forget about them. I think they'll creep
No,
up
okay.
on you.
So here's what I actually covered that in my guide. She if you look at the weapon calcs and the way that her signature is generally like really close to Serpent Spine, and also like you said, the passive talent that gives 20 or 40% attack. Like I do agree that there are clues that she isn't supposed to be played with Bennett, but I think that's like a future. Like I said this in my video. I think that's like a future DLC thing where they end up releasing her real best team or teammates. Mostly because, like I said, the weapon situation. I really don't think that they balanced her signature weapon for it to be so close to the 4-star options in her optimal teams. I really think that at some point in the future, I don't know who, but he will be removed. But at least for now, I think like at the moment, Bennett is her best teammate.
Well, the thing is, Serpent Spine has always been kind of an outlier in the picture of Genshin. Like, it's always been a weapon that has competed very well with 5-star options. Like, excluding things like Ito, who can't use Bennett very well as other carries do. But it's always been a very strong weapon.
I mean, they could have just, if that was the case, they could have just given it maybe 5% more damage, you know what I mean?
Have you looked at the weapon calcs without Bennett?
Yeah. So that's why I did.
That's what I was trying to get at. It's like night and day how good Verdict is compared to everything else, essentially. It also helps.
And you know how I put the Verdict in the low tier for my weapon tier list, right, Jaystern?
No, I completely forgot.
I put it on the Eigen 4-star tier, but now that she's out, and I think that Bennett is not a sure thing in all of her teams, even now, I would definitely put Verdict higher.
So I don't own Verdict. I guess I should say I've intentionally skipped the weapon. I have a R5 Beacon of the Reed Sea I've been using on her.
That's not bad.
It's about slightly worse than an R1 Verdict.
Yeah, for
this weapon has some pretty big drawbacks on her. It also means that I kind of have to play her continuous field time to stay on top of the 8-second cooldown.
Well, if you can get the passive, then the refinement doesn't matter, I guess.
It's about slightly worse or as good as an R1 Verdict with the passive.
Yeah.
with.
Okay. You were talking with the passive.
The 40 attack percent, because you can only get one of the passives. If you have a shield on, you will never get the second one.
But back to what Jaime was saying, and also you just learned, she has a very high damage floor, like comparatively high. Like if you compare it to something like Wanderer without buffs, for example, so Wanderer, a character that can reach really high damage levels with buffs, Navia is for sure considerably higher to me. She feels considerably better without buffs, and that allows her to be played in a lot of different teams.
Yeah, and I would say I would add on to that, not only that, but also the fact that she has like the nuke in the skill. I think basically she does feel really good by herself.
Yeah, she feels like Eula, but good.
I did want to ask if it's only a me issue where even if you have max shards, you do her E skill twice in a row, and you can get two completely different numbers. Is that only a me issue, or is that a common thing that you guys have been seeing?
Well, numbers have varied a lot during my gameplay for Navia, honestly.
Because it depends on the size of the enemy and your distance from them.
That's another reason that Bennett may not be incredibly synergetic with Navia, because if you have to stay in the circle, then if opponents move around, it gets harder for you to target them with elemental skill and get all the projectiles hit in.
I think Bennett is very good because of that. The idea of you only need to really land one hit. It's okay to drift outside the circle with your normal attacks. One of the combos I've been doing a lot is Elemental Skill Burst N3, Elemental Skill N3, N2, and then Elemental Skill, because you get 3 first rotation. Like a prefrontal combo. That is one of the things that I've had a lot of success with. And I think it's really nice that the N3 fits. In pre-release, I was looking at that with N2. Do you have... I know a lot of people recommend just cast her burst and then switch back later when you're about to try to do your damage. But especially when you're playing with Bennett, you end up... If you're trying to fill 3 melee combos, you end up taking a little too much field time to really hit 1 rotation thresholds for me.
It depends on the situation, really. Like in the first side of the current abyss, with an elemental skill and then a few hits and then the burst, you can basically clear up the first wave. So other than the energy, there is also value in practical damage by doing that. And doing 3 elemental skills per rotation has been, to me, much more convenient in practice than in theory, because if you assume fixed rotations, then it gets a bit inconsistent. But in practice, if you consider that the rotation can extend, and also if you have high damage thresholds, a high damage output on your Navia, you can possibly end the Abyss Room in 1 or 2 rotations. Then doing 3 elemental skills per rotation it has been pretty good to me.
Okay. I don't know about you, Jaime. What combos have you been doing? What do you like? What do you not like with Navia combos? Or like even play styles?
Okay, so this is actually something I put in my recent video. I know a lot of I know people have calculated that like N3 combos. I think N3 N2
It gets you 3
is like the thing you should be doing, but take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, this might not be relevant to you guys. But what's happened recently with speedrunning is people are just straight up just doing N2 and then just that's all they're doing and just dash cancelling that and then using that skill in between. And that seems to be more optimal, but I have no idea how that calcs. But that's something that I'm going to look at.
It has to
be depending on your crystal generation on the team. If you can front load the elemental skill more, so you can get the shards faster and using the 2 elemental skills in quick succession, basically. Depending on the opponent you're facing, that has value. That has a lot of value, actually.
Yeah, what I think what I think might be a factor is that because you're dashing more often, it's more picking up. You're more consistently picking up shards,
that's
so you're able to fully utilize the tap skill better. I think
that's interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say the primary reason people do N3, N2 over N4, N1 is, well, first it's a little easier, but second you generate an extra crystal. It's 3 crystals on N3, N2 versus 2 crystals on N4, N1, which is just an interesting ICD thing.
Yeah, and to be honest, I like her N3 animation. I like her third normal attack animation. It's similar to Zhongli, but it is. I don't know. I'm quite interested in looking into the N2 spam stuff. It's quite interesting how like almost every character like ends up.
Yeah, honestly, with most other characters, when it comes to combos, like it's about damage, but Navia's normal attack damage isn't that high, so it's just about what you need in terms of crystal generation in a specific situation.
Sometimes you don't necessarily need the crystals. If you're greeting for damage, N4, N1 is still like 10% more damage than N3, N2.
How did
especially
you feel
if
about the
you're at the
normal
end of a
attack
champion.
damage in general?
I'm talent level 7 on it, but it's not bad.
It's okay, but there is definitely room for them to release a character that can alternate with Navia and actually deal serious normal attack damage, like Chiori, for example, if she's on fielder.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, if you had to design a dream character for Navia in her teams, what do you do? Do you do healer? Do you do a damage dealer? Do you do a buffer? What would you rather have?
Shall I go first, actually?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about it, and I actually did. I don't know how many people in the chat are subscribed to me, but I actually did make a video just before Fontaine where I thought about a bunch of different like copium ideas for characters I would like to see, and we ended up making like a little podcast with it with Jeff. But one of the ideas I put in that video was me trying to identify what I thought Geo was lacking and what I wanted, and I basically came up with like a heavily restricted Geo grouper. Like you have to hear me out on this, but it's something like a Geo support where they have an effect that activates when you have maybe 2 Geos in your party. Like it won't work when you only have 1, so you have to have like a Geo team, and maybe each time your party absorbs a crystallized shard, you either get like some sort of quicksand or like a dust devil, if you guys don't know what a dust devil is, and you get a bit of suction. And obviously this idea is just like pure copium, I know, but I do try balance it with how Genshin make the game, like put in the restrictions. But obviously I know that they only release like 1 geo character a year anyway, so it's like a 90% chance this will never happen.
Hey, she's in the event right now. We're getting another Geo this year. Don't worry. It's official.
But just for context, I did also have like a similar idea for physical, where I did like with superconduct instead. But to be honest, my point is that personally, I don't really care about like common arguments that a geo or physical teams need to do more damage. Like for me, I think that those kinds of teams not being able to play a Kazuha like character in AoE basically like sucks a lot of the fun out of these teams for the average player, and I think that's one of the contributors to why they are quote unquote less popular. And to be honest, I think that's actually something that the community underestimates, which is that like everyone has their own favorite main DPS or favorite teams that they like to play. But I do think, almost objectively speaking, adding Kazuha into your teams makes them more fun. And I think people feel this internally, but they may take it for granted. So that was my idea for Geo.
Yeah, but probably they're probably not releasing a grouper.
I think
not any,
Kazuha makes teams more fun because he makes them more consistent. Because he ultimately is the only dependable grouper. Which is a kind of upsetting and oppressive that he still is this. Like
the thing people struggle with the most is AoE content for sure. Like bosses, they are mostly DPS checks. You have to care about faces and such, but in terms of positioning and other stuff like that, the AoE rooms are definitely the problem with the Abyss, in my opinion. And so characters like Navia, Kazuha, who can deal a lot of AoE guaranteed damage, and or enable AoE damage in the case of Kazuha, they come in handy for the average player. But going back to what we like for a Geo partner, a healer could work. It could be good, but I'm worried about their balancing when it comes to designing a healer, because if you pick, for example, Baiju, I don't know how much I would like a Geo Baiju for Navia. And Navia teams already have a healer, like Bennett. Bennett works with Fiorina, give or take. So I think I would like more a quick swap DPS that fits well with her. Just because I don't trust how they will balance a potential healer.
I actually do think I am gonna still say a healer. I think there's very easy ways to balance it. One, the character is Geo, which kind of inherently balances them because they have no element outside of Geo teams. So they start off as a detriment to use in most cases. So you're with a healer, with a Geo healer, you would either be able to load them up with offensive buffs or their own kind of damage. Just
Yeah, but
inherently them being Geo, I think, is enough of a balancing metric where they could do, let's say, this character is a Geo grouper who heals, or this character is Geo and gives you 30 damage percent.
Yeah, I guess. But Geo is a very neutral element. So a healer being Geo means that the healer can be used in basically every team, if you think about it. So what people think of Bydrain now, that he is a healer that can be used everywhere, but actually true. I guess you can use Petra on the Geo healer too.
I kind of see no problem with that.
If they make a Geo healer that is actually functional offensively, I agree with you. I like him, but I'm just worried about their thoughts on balancing him.
But yet, like, regarding the balance, I don't think that's an issue because you're giving up energy generation for, let's say, someone in your team, whether that be like Shengling for Yellow, whatever. There's an inherent drawback. They're not Animos, so they don't have access to VV. They have Archaic Petra, which is still less popular than it should be today. And main DPS they work well with would be Navia. If their buff was big enough, you could use them instead of an Animo healer in Double Hydro, but that would be a big if, and that would be the balancing metric. Whether or not they're as good as the Animo character, or Animo healer for Double Hydro.
What about a character that actually, now for real, changes how Crystallites works? Not in the way Nilu does, but just adds more effect to it.
I don't think they're interested. Even looking at Chevreuse, we can talk about Chevreuse, right?
I don't know, not really.
Did they? Did they officially show her kit? We'll just leave it alone. I don't think they're interested in changing how the reactions work. I think they're more interested in rewarding you for doing the reactions with something that isn't inherent to the reaction normally. For Navia, it's her damage increases. For potential characters, it could be on Superconduct, you'll get a Death Shred or something. On Overload, trigger damage percent or attack. These are rewards for the damage or for triggering the reactions that aren't just the reaction does more damage now, which I think is a more interesting design space to have versus just.
I did.
Oh, sorry. Some people are saying in the chat that she is playable in the event, but to be honest, I haven't actually got that far yet, so I don't know anything myself. So.
Well. Basically, whenever you trigger an overload, she shreds the enemies, and she gives you attack percent, and at C6, she gives you 60 damage percent for doing this. But the catch is you can only play Pyro and Electro teams.
Well, another example that is already in the game would be Fremine.
Yeah, he rewards you for doing Shatter. I like that.
That's
what I meant. I didn't mean her being another Nilu type character, just giving you more rewards as a support. For proccing Crystallites, that would be awesome with Navia.
No. I thought you said, like, changing the reaction.
I said the opposite, not changing the...
Yeah, I think that what they've been doing, specifically with Chevreuse, where they're rewarding you for doing the reaction, and Navia as well, I think that's a great design space, and I hope we continue to see that. People may complain that it feels bad that it takes a team slot for these things, but it's not Nilu, it's not just the reaction. You're getting more out of it which is why I like it.
You know what? I've said this before, but in an ideal world, I would much rather characters like Nilu and the new character that they weren't a thing. In the ideal world, that the reactions and the playstyle was just good, or it was just buffed. But I did say that this is the best second option, and it's much better actually them doing something about it in this way than just never touching that playstyle at all. And at least they're doing something and they're putting a character in there that at least with Nilu is actually getting people to play that playstyle.
Yeah.
Like I would much rather that base bloom wasn't shit in the first place, but unfortunately it is. So at least they are putting out the second best solution to that, since they don't not really interested in buffing.
I said there wasn't damage incentive, like a reason besides the reaction to Nilo. That's actually not true. If you pull C2, she has Hydro and Dendro Red Shred, which greatly increases talent damage in Nilo teams.
Yeah, and then people play Al-Haytham with him. Yeah, I don't know if you guys knew that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's like Al-Haytham, Nilou, anyone Baiju, or Jingqiao, Yelan Baiju.
It's Jingqiao, and then you can play like Kirara, Baiju, or Yao Yao.
Yeah.
And that's actually I know you guys are not interested in speedrunning, but that's actually like his optimal like speedrun team for like lower budget people with like
fun.
C2 Nilou. Yeah.
I've not really calced Nilo Al-Haytham at all, so I look into it. It's fun. I've tried it.
Yeah, the best thing about it is that because a lot of people say that Nilou needs Nahida, but the best thing about it is that if you like Al-Haytham, you have him instead, then she doesn't really need Nahida. And you also get the most important thing is the fact that you don't have to reapply Nahida's skill after every multi-wave, so you can just brute force it with Al-Haytham.
Yep.
And that's actually a pretty good team, especially because you can use 4-star teammates.
I don't know if I've ever asked you about. So, here's my opinion. I really like Dendro healer slots on Nilou teams. First of all, you don't really need to build them fully M, so they can fundamentally heal more without sacrificing any of your blooms. And
heal
then
more compared to who?
Kokomi. Or Hydro healers, Kokomi or Barbara. It's much safer, and you get to run higher damage blooms. It also opens up a more interesting offensive slot, being your Hydro, which lets you run Xingqiao, Yelan, Ayatel, or like kind of.
For example, I play a Constellation to Yelan there, so I definitely prefer the Dendro healer in that case.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to get your opinion because I know you are a very big Kokomi booster.
I mean, not really. I do like Nilou guides for all our teams, but what are you asking with that? Whether I think that
do you think Kokomi is like still a recommended, or like you kind of need this character?
Oh, okay. So the thing with that is that it always depends on like what the person's interested in, right? Like the community. Like I could give you the answer for like a hardcore player, or I could give it for like a casual player, or I could even give it the answer which you might be more interested in is the answer if someone doesn't have Kokomi, and if you think that I think they should get Kokomi. So it really depends.
Let's hear all three. I'm curious. Oh, it's popcorn.
Well, if you're talking about like speed running, then I mean, I think it's like well known at this point that like the Nilou, Nahida, Kokomi, Kole, or Xingqiao, those are still like even a year on. Those are still like the optimal teams for like lower budget players. Like basically every Abyss, but there is like the Al-Haytham teams now as well. But for Dendro, like healers and shielders, that isn't, at least for like the hardcore speedrun, that isn't really a thing until people are starting to get a bunch of constellations and stuff. Just because at that point you can put in like Yelan or Al-Haytham, or you can do like the C2 Baiju team or the C6 Baiju team, but you never even switch to him. But but yeah, like I said, that's just like one type of community that I personally wouldn't see a need to tell someone that they have to get Kokomi if they're a more casual player. There really is no need. Just because the thing with Nilu is she's like, and a lot of people like criticize Nilu's mechanic that she limits team building. But if you actually look at it for casual play, so I'm talking about like what you see in usage rates or what you see on YouTube, Nilu has like so much diversity in the actual characters you can play, and you can say that's like a high floor or whatever. Basically, it means you don't really need any teammate in particular.
Yeah, if I can say something, I'm not a Kokomi expert or anything, but for casual play, in my opinion, Nilu teams, especially in AoE, it doesn't really matter that much what you play. Like, if for the average player, I know you talked about Alhaitham, but if you have an Ahida, a second Dendro, a second Hydro, or a healer on team, then there won't be just much difference in execution. If you really work into optimizing your rotation and stuff for multi-wave, then you can talk about Kokomi, Colney, Kirara, those characters that add something unique to Nilu teams in terms of application, I guess. But for the average player, it doesn't really matter that much, probably.
Well, yeah, no, you're right. You're right. So it kind of depends on like what the person's asking. Like if it's just a very casual, in the most broadest sense, like it doesn't really matter. You can play so many different variations. But even like technically, I should add, like, even within the casual sense, there are still optimizations that you can do, but it's not the biggest deal if the person isn't interested in that. Like, you don't need to, like, or unless you really know what you're doing. If someone were to ask me, like, what's the difference between like Traveler and Collei, I do obviously know, and I would send them like all the different guides and stuff. But for a very casual, on the most broadest level, you can play either. You can just say that you can just play whoever you want.
Interesting.
And that's the reason people like Nidu so much, because she offers so much guaranteed damage in AoE. So just like Kazuha, in a way, Neuvillette, people like these characters because they're easy to play and they produce very good results in their niche.
Yeah, and not only that, but like I was saying before, if you really do go through like YouTube and you go through like the CN usage rates and all that, like Nilu is the character who has the most diversity in what people find success with, even if it's not like the most optimal or like speed running or anything. Like, she is that character where a lot of people are playing each different variation and it's working for them and finding their own success. Like, even people are playing like Ayato.
Yeah, that's the variation I play the most. I play Ayato, Nahida, Yaya, or Baiju the most.
Yeah,
and I was kind of digging at... My Kokomi is level 80. Is it even worth me leveling the Kokomi?
Well, like I said, even it depends on how much of a hardcore player that you are. But I would say like your Ayato team is like, if you were sweating and trying to be optimal, that's like, he is like nowhere close to being an optimal teammate.
Really?
But
think
if you don't care about that optimization, then he's fine.
If you're facing three opponents that can be grouped like the Kenki trio, Ayato has quite a value, but that's pretty unique situation.
Ayato was the fastest against the triple Kenkis, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for you?
In general, wasn't he?
No, he wasn't. He was...
Interesting.
Yeah, it was the team I said before. And then if you go on higher, if you basically at lower budgets, it's like Nilu, Nahida, Kokomi, and then either Collei or Xingqiu. And then at higher budgets, like when people have tons of constellations, or even just like C2s, then at that point a lot of people just play like C2 Yelan and like C2 Baiju, and they kind of just do like the Yelan on-field thing, especially at C6 Yelan. But Ayato is never really thing. But like I said, he's very comfortable, and he's got cool animations.
His burst is funny.
So since we're talking about Hydro characters, excluding Neuvillette, Fiorina, Yelan, going back to the old conversation, what is the pool between Kokomi, Ayato, Child? So these on-field Hydro characters, like, Who would you say that now is the pull with the current meta scene?
There are not
I mean,
a ton
you
of.
know, you know who it is. That's you know what time it is, right?
What?
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 You know it's Nouvellette, the back
He
chest.
said ignoring Nuvulette.
Ignoring Newland, because
Oh.
he is for sure the pick in that case for on field. But there was always the old debate between people arguing
The idea of the
Kokomi is
on-field
better,
nature
Ayato is
replicating.
better, Child has the biggest ceiling because of international. But for the current scope of the meta, what would you say is the pick? Like the
I can give a hot take here. Kokomi very much is Kokomi is played a lot because she's very flexible. She is Hydro, and the idea of consolidating your Hydro and your healer used to be very desirable. Now you want more healers that are not Hydro. So that does affect Kokomi, but Kokomi also has like newfound success as an on-field DPS. It's very common for Kokomi DPS to outperform Ayaka, which is based. Originally they pulled Kokomi to support Ayaka. I love that. Ayato is a character. Tartaglia has been kind of struggling with a bit of a fall from grace, but he's still not bad.
Okay, I would have to disagree with that. But obviously, I'm coming from like a very try hard perspective. But I think we all know. I'm being a bit sarcastic there, but Child International, I have to say it. It has been the most consistent team for years, and it's probably never going to stop. So, but I will say that obviously you do have to be a hardcore player to optimize things, and you do have to know what you're doing. So it depends on if, like I said, I keep saying this, but yeah, it really does depend on who's asking.
You should play international on a lot of the accounts I've played on.
Yeah, I think in terms of the team being consistent actually on different accounts, different types of level of play, it's kind of similar to Ayaka. So international is not a surefire team, sure hit team. Like it's a team that in many situations will perform pretty average, I guess. I know what you're talking about, Jaime, because for the low investment speedruns, international can still be pretty impressive, but for the average player,
not only that, I should clarify that
if we were talking about speedruns, there's literally no one else you would pull other than Tartaglia from the three. Ayato and Kokomi are borderline unviable for speedruns outside Nilo.
Yeah.
But I should clarify, I'm also assuming that the person asking this question is like actually wanting to dedicate themselves to like a character or a team. Like they're not. I'm not really good at seeing. I don't like seeing things from the perspective of someone who pulls new characters every single patch. So for me,
what if someone who hasn't playing for a year? What if someone's trying to get into Genshin Impact?
But
yeah, but
like
I
person
said,
doesn't know what he's getting into. Because people like to say, "Oh, international is this team that can steamroll their base," but the nuance in that is that it requires heavy work in terms of refining your skills to play the team. But this is often not mentioned when it comes to these conversations. So when somebody thinks of pulling Child, he thinks, "Oh, I'm getting this character that will allow me to steamroll their base."
I don't even think it's about skill. I think it's about stat check.
That's true also, yeah. But managing all the different things you have to manage on the team, it's also something that you have to put work into and time into.
I think it's very resin intensive to get.
The thing is that goes to every team. Like if you're talking about optimization, that goes. Every team requires like for you to properly farm your artifacts, you to build them, you to know how to play them. But like I said, if your question was about like a newer player who's just started, then obviously that's a different question. But even then, I probably wouldn't even answer it for a newer player. Like,
well,
I don't think it
The
matters
context
who,
of the
who they.
question was somewhat recommending a poll, wasn't it?
I
Yeah.
mean, but personally, I don't really recommend. I just recommend people just play the game and like pull who they like, and learn how to play the game, learn how to optimize whatever team you decide to play, and it doesn't really worry. For me, I like it. It doesn't really.
Okay.
You don't need to care about optimizing until you actually care about it. So I don't really think a newer player. I don't think a newer player cares about how fast international is clearing or how many different teams they can play with Kokomi, especially if characters are only rerunning every 3 weeks. So they probably don't really have that much characters to play anyway. So it is quite a
Yeah.
tough question,
It is a
really.
tough question.
But it's a hypothetical. Obviously, I'm pooping the party, but
Yeah.
that's just my perspective. I don't think it really matters.
Yeah.
But I am a
How much
backtester of
do you think the idea of an on-field hydro character matters outside of just a straight-up on-field DPS who doesn't really care about reactions? Which is kind of what Navia is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think it matters at all. I think I mean, like, okay, I feel like I'm pooping the party again, but I feel like when people talk broadly about elements, that it kind of doesn't really
Yeah.
hold up. Like, what you're really talking about is you're talking about specific characters or the specific teams examples. But
Yep.
like Navia can any character in the same team, any character in any team can basically. No, that's a bad argument. I think I would say that. Yeah, I would say that you're not really. No one's really talking about an element blankly. You're talking about specific characters. Like you wouldn't have the same idea for a Navia that you do with Barbara or
No.
whatever.
That being said, so I did a new account 36-star speedrun. We did it in 18 days. It was 18 or not? It was 18. Might have been 19. We had played Navia, Cole, DMC, Shinobu, which is a Barbara team. Which is, I technically did do that.
And who was it?
We 36 started. That's all that really matters. And it was in 18 days. It didn't
it's
really
Navia.
matter if Navia or Aido or even Jingcho was there. But the fact is, I was able to do it with Navia, because he just does enough damage to make up for not producing as many bloom cores.
Yeah, he could be like Animo or Geo or anything really, and it doesn't really
super matter.
Yeah.
Which is honestly Aido's major failing. Aido wants to be that, but he also doesn't do enough damage.
I think I was actually talking about this in TGS's Discord yesterday, maybe. But
Yeah.
I was, at least from my perspective, I was saying that I think Ayato was very obviously balanced around being easy to play, and number two, having like cool animations, like the cool flash animations. And he was very obviously not balanced around like having high DPS like that. I don't think that was ever a thing. I don't think it will be a thing, but I think. What I would say is that the cool animations and the easy to play is perfectly sufficient for a lot of people.
I do.
I don't think he's ever going to play DPS.
I won't say Ayato is really easy to play, honestly, because his windows length are pretty uncommon. If you're accustomed to playing pretty much every other carry,
no, but you're thinking about it in terms of like rotation optimization. But it's the fact that you can just like hold the click, and he has the big AOE, and he has the cool animation, the 8 rotations. Like that is like you can literally see. No, but the thing is, you can literally see in like usage rates and YouTube, and like even like casual YouTube guides and advice that being easy to play, like requiring no skill and looking cool whilst doing it actually carries you very far. Like he always has pretty good usage, so it's quite valuable, even though he has like no DPS. But I don't think he was balanced to have DPS.
Characters having very autonomous damage functions is always nice. Pyronado always revolves around you 11 times. Nuviolet always does his beam for 5 seconds-ish. Aido, as long as you hold the button, he'll do his 15 slashes.
Yeah,
but Aido is very much maybe not in the same class as those other two.
I think Ayato has the worst hyper teams in existence.
Yeah,
in
he
terms of
does. But for a mobile, the
calculating-
thing is, for a mobile player who's like on their phone in like a train in like Japan or something, like that ease of play, it does go pretty far. Even though that's not how I play the game, I can still
I
acknowledge that goes
I think
far.
it only goes so far. I do think Ido was originally designed to be a major on-field damage dealer. I think they had a
But how?
failing in that they didn't give him enough damage. How? Well, first of all, regarding Hydro App, his E skill, like the slashes, it doesn't apply much. It's every third slash. So 5 Hydro Apps across 10-ish seconds, 9-ish, 10-ish. It's not a lot of Hydro. His burst applies a bit more Hydro, but even then, it's still just less than a lot of other characters. The cool thing about Ido is that he's this hybrid on-field, off-field Hydro app, which is cool. It's fun, but it's not very effective as just a traditional, or as effective as a traditional off-field Hydro app. And he does less damage than a traditional on-field damage dealer. If you look at his constellation set, C1, increased damage, C3, increased damage, C4, attack speed, C6
I think
gives
he
him a
has-
burst.
Yeah,
do
some
you
of the
think
best
that they-
constellations for increasing damage. Actually, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
In terms of relative damage increase, his constellations are
They're good.
the best.
No.
no,
Technically,
I don't know.
Farina's are.
Oh yeah,
Farina, I think, is the first character with a triple damage increase constellation set.
I mean, the thing is with like constellation calcs, they never really tell the full story. Like
No.
I'm sure you guys know this, and I'm sure your chat know it, but
Kokomi constellations?
well, like whenever you do like a constellation calc, you use the same rotation that you use for C0, but you just plug in extra numbers. If it does have slight changes, then you add that in. But the thing is, constellation calcs never they can't really factor in how increasing your damage can change how that character plays. Like for example, like Yelan, you can do like a constellation calc on Yelan, and it can look impressive, but it will never show you that the fact that her C6 will defeat enemies so quickly that her burst damage doesn't really matter past a certain point. So her actual damage increase for that 5 or 7 seconds or whatever is so high, and like her burst damage after that, it doesn't matter because you're never going to do it. And that's why something even it extends past constellation calcs, and it can turn into like artifact calcs, where even at C6 you can have a guide where you calculate that emblem is still her best set at C6, but obviously we know from playing that you're not getting anywhere near the amount of burst hits for that to be relevant. So that's why the mix set is better. So basically, yeah, I did a whole rant there, but basically, I think
So, here is a thing. People pull C6 and they aren't exactly always hardcore players. They will play casually. They will take more than one rotation to clear an Abyss Chamber. It's not really fair to assume a C6 is one rotating every chamber.
But it's also not really accurate to assume that.
That being
You're
said,
still-
regarding things like Yale and C6, if someone doing the numbers thinks about the numbers they're calcing instead of them just being numbers, they really should be realizing, hey, the C6 itself is doing 600k damage per rotation. If I add the E skills, it's like 1 million, and the burst hits during the C6 window. This is enough damage to where other things become irrelevant. It's really important to be self-aware, and I wish more people were. Like, hey, Genshin is an actual video game and not a spreadsheet.
yeah, and constellation calcs as well as calcs in general, they're just estimates at the end of the day. Like you get an amount of damage, and that gives you the hint of how a character should be played and how he can deal that type of damage and how the team should be played. But at the end of the day, they're both estimates. But if I'm telling you, Constellation 6, Farina gets 2 billion damage percent of increase, it gives you the hint, oh, these constellations are very good. regardless of how it applies to the rotation.
I am trying. There was a person recently who told me, "Hey, I have a C6 R5 Edo. I've pulled C3 Farina. Should I pull for C6? Can you do a calc to let me know the damage increase I'd get from pulling Farina C6?" And
Yeah.
this was my response. I
hate that.
calced the C6 R5 Edo with C3 Farina and just Goro's healing. And I was like, this is 2 million damage per rotation. You're not going to see a difference. C6ing Farina. So the calc is, on paper, the calc is irrelevant. So I kind of just refused to do it, or to like do it. I provided the explanation. I said, hey, this is enough damage to where a calc is irrelevant. It doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also like to give us credit, it is just too unfeasible to get any relevant results from doing something like that. It's just not really something you can calc and be happy with your findings.
No.
Personally.
When I analyze Constellation 6 for characters, I like to look more at the damage instances and total damage dealt in specific windows. Like, I think that's a more accurate way to see how much the Constellation is benefiting the character than doing a DPS calc.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think damage per rotation is a very underestimated metric in the community. Should be pushed a lot harder.
Oh, it's getting less underestimated now that Newbie Led can deal millions of damage per rotation in its long rotations.
It's very easy. There are a lot of characters who do very long rotations who, even if they could sheet higher DPS, it wouldn't really matter because it takes them so long to do that damage. I'm specifically talking about Xiao and Sino. More specifically, Sino. It is problematic that his rotations are as long as they are, even though his total damage per rotation is high. There does need to be a balance, and I do agree with kind of looking at damage over a window, or even just looking at total damage and be like, hey, this is enough damage to one-shot most things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I actually like. I wish. Well, I don't want to say I wish more people did this because obviously I know it takes a lot of work. But I do wish like more people were interested in like seeing different variants, like seeing, like you said, that this already does enough damage. So I'm going to show you 3 different rotations, 3 different flexible ways you can set up and still. And how the damage might change, or how like your setup time might change, and yeah, even also like different weapons and doing different cards. I just would like people to focus less on just one final number to like define a team. And
the thing is, when the average player, this is how I feel, looks at Theorycrafting or Theorycrafter results, they look at the damage that the Theorycrafting is producing, they kind of look at the rotation, but they just do it to know that if the character is good in that team or not. So if they see a high number, they will maybe play that team, but then the rotation itself, they will take the hint from the Theorycrafter, but then they personalize it the way they want.
Yeah, I know. So that's why like I that's why it's not really, because it takes a lot of work for us to make that stuff. So it's not really a dig at people who make the sheets because it takes a lot of work. But I like you said, I do wish the person consuming it was more interested in us showing different variations and expanding upon that one number, showing you different flexible setups. Like for example, if there was a team that had a high sheet DPS, but you could only do it in that one setup, and the one setup takes like 11 seconds or whatever.
What do you mean you don't like Farina Kazuha Bennett?
I just would like I would like if people were interested more in seeing, okay, maybe you lose like 10% overall DPS, but actually you could do this setup that takes like 5 seconds or something.
Yeah, but I like it this
Yeah,
way.
They just want to see the final number.
A lot of people are interested in final numbers. because of confirmation bias. They're looking to affirm their opinions. It's also relevant in their choice of theory crafter and the content they consume. People will, if they like a character, they will gravitate towards a theory crafter that gives them a more positive result. And then they will choose to weaponize that calc against anyone who says otherwise.
Yeah, but regarding showing different rotations, I kind of like it this way, so leaving something untold. Because trying to predict everything and show scenarios for everything, I kind of think it removes a bit of the fun from the game itself. Like for me, even though I'm a theory crafter, I figure out a lot of stuff in game. Like when I'm facing a very specific room, I figure out how maybe I can clear this room faster if I do these things differently. And I like to leave that without trying to predict the correct rotation, I guess.
You know, speaking of theory crafting results, I actually did want to talk about this. Our friend Genshin Scientist here does 5-star weapon damage calcs. Personally, I do 4-star weapon, R1 battle pass stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That line in the sand is very arbitrary, and I think I thought about doing 5-star weapons for some upcoming characters, but it's kind of like, where do you draw the line on what's too much to assume?
Specifically, I do both 4-star and 5-star. So maybe some graphs have 5-star weapons on it, but
when you're
for the most part,
when you're doing 5-star weapons, I mean, where do you draw the line? Like, if there's a team where everyone wants a 5-star, or everyone could use a very good 5-star weapon, and all the 5-star weapons are very similar, where do you draw the line?
I'm generally assuming just a single 5-star weapon, and that's going to the character that benefits the most from it on the team. I've done a calc with 2 5-star weapons, but that was double Hydro with Noel.
No.
Yeah. And so that's a situation where both Furina and Yelan clearly benefit a lot from having their 5-star weapon. So I do it like giving the 5-star weapon to a character with the purpose of showing the viewer how much the team will benefit from investing hard on that character. But I draw the line at that because then it gets to investment levels that are just too restricting to assume.
There's also, what do you do about someone like Navia who wants his C1 over his 5-star weapon, etc., etc.?
Yeah, you can talk about
it's just, it feels a little too arbitrary for me, which is kind of why I'm happy where I am.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
But I don't do it to suggest the player to invest on a specific thing over the other. Just to show how much the team benefits from investing on that character in a way, but it doesn't have to be the specific way you have to invest on that character.
I actually put something in the chat. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people don't know that I used to do a lot of sheets and spend a lot of time with them. I think I do a lot of like speed running and gameplay stuff nowadays, but I used to look at a lot of different types of investment and just give you like a ton. And whenever I did like a video on a like specific team or something, I would just give like a ton of different upgrades and then like increase per upgrade. Like, so I would do like the KKM standard, whatever rubbish stuff, and then I would show how you can improve it from there. But this requires like a lot of time. Like, I don't know if...
Yes, it's very time intensive.
It's very time intensive, yeah. Like, I could show you, like... 1 second, hold on. Since you mentioned that you play Star Rail.
The problem with only looking at 5-star polls is it completely ignores how hard 4-stars are to get. Even 4-star weapons.
The thing is, it's not about like showing like what they... It's just about giving the information. That's all it's about. Giving them giving them the base team and the base catalog, but not leaving it out there. Telling them, oh, how can this team change if you have this instead or that instead, or even like if they want to inform themselves on which thing they should get instead. Like, it's really up to them, but it's just about giving more information than just one team. But obviously, I know you guys know this because you guys do calcs as well. But some people in chat might know it,
Did
but
you
this
just
stuff takes
did you
forever.
just give up? You've copy pasted a picture of a number in here? Did you?
Wait, hold on.
You've,
I thought I gave my Chingcho calcs.
no, I'm looking at the 7 gold pulver. There's no like.
Yeah, the NGA screenshot.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Oh.
Uh,
Okay. Anyway, I was trying to give you some Star Rail calcs, which are like
ooh.
the most
This one.
detailed calcs that you would ever see in your life, and this took forever. But I already decided to put calcs in my video, so I was already committed. So I just started doing. I think it's gonna be like 2 days worth to make these calcs, but you can
In Star Rail, you have to simulate enemy actions or so.
Yeah. So
something
the
like that.
thing with Star Rail is that calcs are even worse in Star Rail than in Genshin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just because the assumptions that people try to make, and they try to take what they learned from Genshin and put it in Star Rail, but it just did not work at all. But I still did this anyway. But this was ridiculous. I think it took like, it's not even loading on my screen, but
Yeah, I saw a calc
it's
about
it's not loading for me either.
it was about Kafka back in the day, like when Kafka was still coming out, and this shit was absurd because the Theorycrafter said I tried to use the rotation for the team based on like 20 different types of enemy actions in a 7-turn window.
okay, it should be working now. You should be able to see it.
If I
But-
were to do Star Rail calcs, what I would look at it in terms of is turn or actions per turn and how enemies can disrupt that.
Mm-hmm.
So is it loading? Look how many
Yes,
look how many
I do
different
see this.
numbers and different tabs there are in this. And even then, after doing all this, I
How
would
much
still
of
say
this
that
is
Star Rail-
because you played the gambling character, though?
I mean, I only really make videos on characters I like main. But if you look how many tabs there are in this and how many different weapons and different variations I looked at each different combo you can do. I looked at tons of different weapons and tons of different like what they called planar ornaments and stuff. And basically, even then, after doing all this shit, I would say that calcs are borderline pointless. Aside from just knowing which weapon you want to pick, or the fact that these relic sets are basically almost the same. Like a lot of people in Genshin know this already, but if calcs are like within, if any like weapon or artifact calcs are within like 1 or 3% or something, like anywhere like around 2%,
It depends.
you would know that it's about one substat. But like in Star Rail, people weren't really familiar with that yet, and they weren't familiar with just how close a lot of basically just how weak all the relic sets and the planar sets, apart from like the quantum set or whatever. But the differences are so meaningless that this whole thing became pointless. But I already committed myself to doing it. But
Why does my
it was
Sealy
fun.
do so little damage, Jamie?
Huh?
Why does my Sealy do so little damage? What's wrong with her?
Maybe you're not killing opponents this turn with her.
Yeah. I'm guessing you haven't really played enough yet.
I have Sealy and I have Jingliu, and Sealy takes about 5 extra phases.
Yes. If you can kill opponents reliably with Shannon Sealer, you will feel it.
Ugh.
But yeah, so what was the question? The question was like, is it worth? What did you say? Is it worth doing 5-star weapon guns?
It's more like when it's so arbitrary, how much value can you actually derive from it? Because you can very much set up the scenario to be whatever. It's kind of like this thing where there's no such thing as a non-biased calc.
I mean, it's just like what we were saying earlier. Like, there is only so much you can get out of like a DPS calc. It's not really that helpful, but it is just putting the information out there and giving someone some sort of information. So I would say that giving different variations with different gear sets or artifacts, whatever, is just giving people more information. And yeah, you can't really. It depends what you expect to get out of a calc.
Oh yeah. Also, my chat. Whenever I like ask about something in Star Rail, or like, I kind of like, what's wrong with this, or like, why is, or like, what's going on with this? How do I do this? Very often the answer is spend more money. And I think I hate that. It drives me crazy every time. That is the
What's the
first
question, though?
recommendation for Honkai Star Rail.
No, but I would disagree. Like, but what's the question that they're asking? How to do what?
It's literally everything, man. It's literally.
I think what Jason is saying is that to get better results in Star Rail with your account at a specific time, you have to spend more, right?
No, but you
right?
don't really.
It's more like if you want more efficient SP generation or usage, you need to pull for 5-star weapons. If you want Huo to not suck up most of your SP by being SP neutral, you have to pull C1.
No, but that's like it's basically just a repackaged Genshin. Like you could say a lot of
I
the
think
C1s
that's a
these days-
lot more aggressive.
No, but a lot of the Genshin constellations give energy generation, do they not? Like it's not
Yeah,
really.
But Genshin doesn't have a
can build-
restriction in the same
But
way.
in Genshin, you can build energy at expense of damage. Constellation 0 in that.
You can,
scenario.
yeah. Genshin doesn't. There are very few constellations that make you need to press E less.
Yeah, but the thing is with Star Rail is that it has the same, like quote unquote, low barrier for completion. Like
And
you're getting the 30 stars.
in
with-
Star Rail, there's no energy recharge substat. It is only a single main stat. It is the rarest main stat. And every other source of energy generation is on weapons only.
Okay, wait 1 second. So just focus on context. So did you start playing Star Rail or get back into it recently? Like have you?
I played in 1.0. I logged in to pull Jinglu. And then I started playing in the Huo update.
So have you got 30 stars yet?
I don't know. No, I have not.
Okay, so that's my
I
thing. So
am
I don't wanna-
Trailblaze 60. 61 now.
So that's my thing. So I don't want to come across like diminishing your argument, but the thing is, you will realize this is exactly the same thing. Once you've been playing the game for a few patches, you just steamroll content constantly, and it's not a problem. Everyone's doing it. I'm a free to play player, and it's like so easy for me. You can do it with 4-star weapons. You don't need to. It's not like Honkai Impact Third. I don't know if any of you guys played Honkai Impact Third. Now that's something that you could say that you do need to start getting into those spending conversations, because in that game you're competing. The barrier for completion is PvP, so you're constantly competing with other players, and they're constantly putting the new characters. So you have to pull the new characters, and you have to know the new. You have to watch the latest Bilibili video to get the new strat if you want to stay in Nirvana.
Okay.
Like,
The argument
is a-
of
Yeah, but I don't
you
think
can
what-
do
what
it
the
at your
trend
own
is being-
pace isn't really what I'm interested in. I talked about what I did with Genshin, where I did the 36 star in 18 days on a new account. Am interested in pushing that kind of progression and trying to rush things.
But my point is that you will realize, even just give it like a patch or two, you'll realize it's the same ease of difficulty for a regular player as it is in Genshin. Maybe even easier because it's auto battle, and like you can auto battle through every floor apart from the last. It's not that I have someone who's played Honkai Impact Third. It's like not even close. It's basically exactly the same as Genshin. And even then, like
probably
Star
have
Rail,
about 100, maybe close to 200 hours in Honkai Star Rail.
but you haven't
I don't-
you haven't got to the level where you haven't reached that investment level of like a regular
The
player.
game gets fun after you've played it for half a year. That's
No, not half a year, like 2 or 3 patches. And my point is that there's no way you need to spend it in the game because it's exactly the same. If anything, it's more friendly because it hasn't got that 33% thing on the weapon banner. And even then, you don't need to really pull weapons in Star Rail anyway. Like, I don't really see the argument how it's.
no.
I don't think
I'm not.
Jason is
I'm more like
saying-
commenting.
I don't
Why
think-
is this? I wanted to ask. Why is this the advice so frequently in my chat? Are they just dumb?
Maybe they're memeing. I'm assuming it's a bit of memeing.
Okay.
And there's no way that they are. if anything, it's probably the same comparison to where you must get people coming into your like YouTube or Twitch and saying they're like and they've got like a whale account but they're still struggling to 36 star, or like a new player and they're still struggling. Like it's basically the same. It must be exact same equivalent. It's like a new player or someone who's just not really good at the game. No disrespect to anyone who's not good at the game.
You have no idea how targeted that is at one of the viewers. You have no idea.
Like you can literally auto battle. It's not that much different against you. If anything, it's more casual friendly because it's a turn-based game. You can auto battle.
Interesting. Oh, speaking of which, what do you? Free Doctor Ratio in Honkai Star Rail. Which is interesting. It's releasing a free character like that. It's very much a technique to boost player retention or have returning players. Do you think that they did this out of a desperation, or were they feeling generous?
I wouldn't call Star Rail a desperate game.
It's like the second most. It's like the second most profitable one after Genshin. Like they literally, or something like that. Like
Yeah,
both of those
but
falling out.
here's the problem. Genshin's on its 4th year.
No, but
Honkai Star
Rail-
Rail like interest peaked at Genshin's 3rd year of baseline of interest.
No, I'm pretty sure Star Rail they overtake Genshin sometimes. It's like it's pretty. And also just bear in mind that a lot of these money revenue stuff, they're all.
I'm not talking about that. I'm actually talking about Google Trends.
Oh, Google Trends. I mean, still like.
Here, hold on.
I would say like my answer to that would be I think that they just have different teams and they have different strategies within teams. Like they're doing this how they want to do it, and Genshin team is doing things how they want to do it, like where they don't release any skins. They release like 4 skins a year, but then you have like the Honkai Impact 3rd team who releases like 2 skins every patch. It's just different teams and they have their different strategies. So
You can
the Star Rail team.
You can touch Twitch categories. I think no matter how you want to look at it, Honkai Star Rail is not as successful or as popular as
I mean,
Genshin
it's a turn-based game, right? Like, I'm assuming like there's lots of games that pop off like just with what they do, but they might not be the best game to stream. Like every single JRPG, or like a bunch of different single-player games, or I'm sure there's even a bunch of different turn-based games which are not necessarily synergistic with Twitch, right? No. I think so.
It's a lot of the same streamers is the first thing I would say, but I do think Honkai Star Rail definitively is a less popular and with a lower concurrent player count game. I think there's a lot of ways you can go about proving that. Whether it's profitable or not, I don't really care. We don't have great metrics to prove that one way or the other. What I can prove is interest.
I mean, you can say that the scope of the game, like the the scope of the game is, by being a turn-based game, is a lot smaller than a 3D open world game. That's just got a much bigger scope and a much bigger pool of audience to pull from. I think that it's just quite as simple as that. But again, I don't work there. I don't know their financial results.
I think making it look like it's a desperation move. It's probably too simplistic of a take because it can be many different reasons. It can be since Dottoraggio is a limited 5-star that you can keep pulling after you got him for free. You can get his signature. Maybe they thought, oh, this character won't sell much, but if we give him for free, maybe there will be people that will invest on him later.
Kind of like.
There is also the side of things that Star Rail is a game that releases many more 5-stars than Genshin. So even though they give more currency, in-game currency, it's a very 5-star heavy game.
Interesting. You know, one of the things that rubbed me the wrong way, like very recently, I did not realize 5-star characters cost more resources to ascend in Honkai Star Rail than 4-star characters. I was like, bruh.
It's also talent levels.
Yeah, 5 stars are 25% more expensive to work on than 4 stars in Honkai Star Rail. Genshin has something similar, but it's only for 5-star weapons, which very much are just better than 4-star weapons in most cases. I don't know if that's kind of what they're insinuating, but it rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, but the point is, I think it's pointless to compare Genshin to Star Rail in the way they do things, because they're different games with different structures.
Fair.
So the reason that Star Rail is giving Dr. Ratio for free, it's pretty hard to figure out, honestly.
And also they have different teams as well, right? Like there's different directors, different leads. Like they recruit separately. There's very little, from what I understand, there's very little crossover. But
as I understand, a lot of the Genshin leads stopped working on the project after Inazuma.
Yes, so you could
Or the
probably
people who were
interpret
working in early Genshin development, they left the project around Inazuma.
Yeah, so you could exactly. So you could interpret it maybe that a lot of weirdly different things in Star Rail are just things that they learned and maybe they wish they could have done in Genshin, but they didn't, obviously, and they just did in Star Rail. Like I'm sure if they could.
I will say this though, with absolute certainty, like anything a gacha game does, it's never because of generosity. Like, they're not giving the ratio because they're generous.
It'll be very interesting to see if giving out the free doctor ratio like inflates their weapon banner sales or something. That would be something interesting to look into, and that's maybe what they're taking at. Or if they expected them to be less popular. This is something Genshin does / has done all the time. Whenever they expect a character to not sell very well, they'll either load them up with 4-star characters, or they'll release them during a slow patch. Which, in the case of Baiju, they released Baiju when Honkai Star Rail released, because they knew they would have a slow update. So they intentionally put out a character people wouldn't be as interested in.
They also always give 2 5-star per patch, so giving one for free is a way, I guess, to calm the community down in terms of the complaints towards the release pace.
Interesting.
I mean, the thing with what you said with Genshin and about how they have banners which they think that would do well and things that they don't well, there's always that conspiracy that they plan their projections, and they plan basically like the average person. They get their paycheck at a certain date in the month.
No, they the biggest banners every year are at least the ones they expect to sell best are always during New Year holiday season and Chinese New Year, as well.
Yeah, so in between strong selling stuff, that they have a cooldown period where they know that something's not going to sell, but that's exactly in the plans.
Kazuha comes back every summer. He's always part of the big summer banner. And then there's Chinese New Year. Last year's Chinese New Year banner was Hutao Yelan. Before that, it was Zhongli Ganyu. They also do big marketing pushes on major version updates, like 3.0, 4.0. And so for 3.0, 4.0, and or like 0.0 and 0.1 updates, they put more into it, which is why we've been getting 2 5-star characters for the 0.1 updates.
Yeah, they're very smart. They're very successful. Like, they know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing. I don't think it's a conspiracy.
Like you sometimes see people say like, "Oh, why are they putting out this banner? Don't they know it's going to make like no money?" Or
that's exactly why they're putting it out.
They're putting it out because their consumer. They're assuming their consumer already spent the previous patch, so they're putting in the rest period and preparing the consumer for the next. Maybe the next patch or the patch after. They're preparing for the big sales then. Like it's all intentional. I don't think they
it's
very smart.
Yeah, they know exactly what
they do it cross games too, because they know
like
Star Rail, they overlay a lot. They have a lot of the same players. So if a game has a hype period, then maybe it's a good idea to not be that hype in the other game.
Genshin will be releasing Xianyan around the same time, or just as Ron Mei is leaving Honkai Star Rail. Ron Mei goes on banner in 3 days in Star Rail.
Yeah.
You could also say that I think chat might correct me if I'm wrong, but when Star Rail released, that's when Genshin like shoved out like Baiju and Kirara.
That's when they put out Baiju. Yep.
Yeah, so they do that because they know that everyone's trying to spend in Star Rail at the moment, so they're just gonna shove these patches in
There's
Genshin.
also, they put Yoimiya on banner very frequently because she's still popular enough to sell a little bit, but not popular enough to distract people or take away hype. Specifically last year, there were 3 or was it 3 or 4 Yoimiya banners? Before Yoimiya, it was Xiao, and before Xiao, it was Tartaglia, where they just repeatedly put them on banner again and again.
Yeah, but that's kind of a bad outlook for Hoyo, maybe, when you think about it. So, splitting revenue between games, because it's fine when you have 2 games and you can alternate hype periods between them, but then when they'll release Zenza Roll or other projects, if their assumption is, oh, the community is always the same between these games, so they're just gonna spend on one game, it will maybe be hard for them to just keep increasing revenue the more they release games.
There's a phrase for this. It's called cannibalizing your audience or cannibalizing your market. They stretch people. If you stretch people too thin, eventually they'll break. But also, like, I talk about this quote from, I believe it's Mark Zuckerberg a lot, but his U.S. Congress hearing, when he's asked, what is your competition? And he goes, the thing about social media platforms, people only use one. So we don't have, like, there is no traditional competition in that way. People are only really into one game at a time. It's very hard to find someone who hardcore theory crafts for both Genshin and Honkai Star Rail.
Yeah.
Simply because of the amount of time and effort it takes to do so.
Yeah.
I have done a few Star Rail. I did like a. How long was this? Hold on.
And I think that's the reason Zenza Roll looks so different compared to Star Rail and Genshin, because they're trying to attract a different type of player base.
I don't know if they're being how successful they are at attracting a different player base, as much as dividing the player base they've already captured.
Yeah, but Zenza Roll is an action game. They already have Honkai Impact, so it's already weird. It's a fighting game, third-person fighting game in a small room. Okay, and so it's a niche they've already experienced. They're already doing with Honkai Impact, which is getting a big update now, a big overhaul too. So they're basically doing more of that, but with a different appeal, kind of different aesthetic. So my interpretation of that is that they're trying to diversify their community a bit more.
Oh, so they are trying to differentiate with art styles. Genshin is very fantasy based, obviously. Z's it's pop art. There's Honkai Star Rail, which is like the sci-fi. And I don't even know what the art direction is for Honkai Impact 3rd. Anime question mark?
Yeah, but thing with Star Rail, it is a different thing compared to Genshin, but it's much closer to Genshin than it is to ZZ, Zenza Roll, whatever.
Looking at, from what I've seen of Honkai Impact 3-2, it's very it looks very stylistically similar to Star Rail. I don't know if Jaime has a different opinion having played both games.
You have these 3 games that, in my opinion, look kind of similar overall. Like, of course, Genshin has different styles and such, but in terms of character, design, model, they kind of appeal to the same type of community to me. While ZZ...
I wonder if that's why Honkai Star Rail is called Honkai Star Rail. Because the art direction is the same or similar. They wanted to, they connected it directly.
Yeah, maybe.
maybe.
It'll be interesting to see what they do in the future with future games too, because they're trying to conquer the world pretty much. Like they have unlimited ambition right now. They're trying to do everything. Like Genshin, if you look at it, it's a guinea pig because they try to do a lot of different things with Genshin to experiment the card game, the events. Like they really try to test their limits a lot. So it would be interesting to see how they expand their gaming inventory in the next 10 years.
Um, it'll be very interesting to see. The kind of amazing thing that they did with Genshin is Genshin doesn't compete with gacha games. It competes with, like, Fortnite. It competes,
Fortnite,
Minecraft. These are like major. Apex Legends, League of Legends. These are like major live service games, or
Yes.
games that are actively played every day. They escaped the gacha market, and I wonder if that can lead to maybe them not making a gacha game.
Mhm.
Please, President G, drop those regulations. Do it. Fuck gacha.
Do you think if those go through, they will apply them to the entirety of the globe, or
Yes.
just China?
They will. They can't piss off their China players. They would have to.
Well, piss off. I think that's better for the game actually. So
I do think it's better for the game.
They will do China a favor over the whole world.
You'd be surprised how many people have gambling brain rot and will defend the gacha system if you say, hey, this sounds great. I would love to play Genshin without a gacha system. People will get very upset at you for even arguing or saying that it's not great.
I guess it's also more justifiable, like mentally, for you yourself to just try to pull for something over buying directly, like pay $500 to get a Constellation 6 Furina.
Man, that's a
much harder
bargain. That's a bargain.
Yeah, in practice it is, but it's just mentally, psychologically, it becomes much harder to accept, I think.
Well, that's the amoral thing about gacha.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you guys want to talk about today?
I actually have to go.
Yeah,
I'm already past my limits of time.
Have a great holiday. Thank you very much. Where can people follow you? Tell us about projects you've got going on. What's coming up? What's on deck?
Me? I'm doing a Navia post release soon.
Oh. How about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I have to go as well. We kind of overshoot this a bit, but I've got, I don't know, I've got videos coming out like about Navia mostly. More things I'm learning, maybe refine some calculations with some more gameplay stuff. That's it really.
Okay. Cool.
Also, one thing, I don't know how much, I don't know what your demographic is in your Twitch, but if there is like English people in there, they might know. I am actually thinking about doing like a mini league for FPL. If there are people in Genshin who are interested in football and FPL, I thought that might be quite
awesome.
fun. Yeah. So if anyone was interested, maybe they can join my server and then we get like a little FPL thing going on. But I'm assuming like you're like most people, where most of your audience is like SEA and America. So, but I thought I might just chuck that in at the end of the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time. That is Jamie KBV9?
Yeah.
It's just random letters.
Maybe 9V. 9V.
9B.
9V.
Yeah, thanks guys for having me. It was a
Nice.
good. Yeah.
Very
Went
nice.
slightly over, but it doesn't really matter. It's
See
fine.
ya. Thank you very much for hanging
Okay.
out. I appreciate
Bye,
it.
guys.
We'll definitely talk to you again sometime. Probably soon.
All right, later. Sorry, guys in the chat. I guess we didn't take any questions, but maybe next time. See ya.
It's better this way.
Oh, I spelled the title
Bye-bye.
wrong? Whoops. That's awkward. Alright, that's podcast. Cool. Let me keep streaming. We're gonna keep playing Genshin today. If anyone's interested in sticking around. But that's the podcast. Speaking of soon,